Have you ever wondered what it feels like to have a billionaire father? It hurts. My father, Victor Whitman, is a giant in New York City, and he talks like he owns Manhattan. He planned my life before I could even walk, schools, friends, career, and husband. He told me love is a luxury for poor people, and marriage is strategy. 6 months ago, I broke his rule. I married Ryan Cole, a mechanic from Queens. At my wedding, with 300 guests watching, my father stood up and ended me. He said I was cut from his will, cut from every trust, and cut from his company. Then he smiled, like humiliation was a business lesson. What he did not know was that Ryan would become his regret. Let me take you back to the night I told him the truth. The Whitman penthouse on the Upper East Side had floor-to-ceiling windows over Central Park. We sat at a walnut table imported from Italy, while my mother, Elaine Whitman, watched. Victor sat at the head like a judge and spoke without looking up. "I have arranged a meeting for you this Saturday," he said. "Harrison Wells III will be there. His family is finalizing our merger, and you will be a strong match." I set down my fork and kept my voice calm. "I cannot make Saturday. I have someone I want you to meet, someone I have been seeing for months." My father looked up, and the temperature dropped. "Who is he?" he asked. "You do not know him," I said, and my mother went still. Victor leaned back, jaw tight. "You have been dating without my approval." I said I do not need approval to date, and his smile turned sharp. "In this family," he said, "love is a hobby, marriage is power." He asked who dared approach his daughter without permission, like I was property. The truth is, I met Ryan on a day I was not meant to be free. I escaped a brutal board meeting, where Victor mocked my proposal in front of executives. I held a Master of Business Administration from Columbia, and he still called me inadequate. I walked out shaking, drove alone, and blew a tire near a small garage. Ryan came out, wiped his hands, and spoke to me like a person, not a deal. Ryan Cole did not ask for my last name. He asked if I was safe. He crouched by the tire, checked the damage, then offered options. His tone was steady, like my panic was not entertainment. When I handed him my card, he barely glanced at it. He said, "Claire, that is enough," and he went back to work. I had spent my whole life being measured by a Whitman name. In that tiny garage, I was only a woman with shaking hands. Ryan talked while he worked, not flattery, not a pitch, just normal conversation. He asked what I did, and I told him I worked in real estate. He nodded, then asked if I liked it, and the question hit me. Nobody in my family ever asked what I liked. I said I did not know, and he smiled like that was honest, not weak. When he finished, he wiped his hands and said I could drive home. I asked how much I owed, and he gave me a fair number. No discount for status, no price hike for it either. I paid, thanked him, and drove away, but my chest felt lighter. The next day, Victor Whitman called me into his office. He criticized my presentation, then asked why my car smelled like rubber. He notices everything, or he tries to. I lied and said I had a minor issue. That night, I went back to the garage with coffee, pretending it was gratitude. Ryan saw me and laughed softly, like he knew I was not done. We talked again, then again, and soon it became a habit. I told him about my father without dramatic details. Ryan listened, then said, "Your father sounds like a man who mistakes fear for respect." The words were simple, and they rearranged my brain. I started meeting Ryan after work, in diners and small parks, places my father never enters. Ryan never asked for gifts, never asked for favors, never asked for access. He asked about my day, and he remembered my answers. One evening, I admitted I was expected to marry a stranger for a merger. Ryan did not mock me. He just said, "You deserve a life that feels like your own." I went home and stared at the penthouse windows, and for the first time they looked like bars. For weeks, I lived two lives, one public and one real. In Victor Whitman world, I wore heels and silence. In Ryan Cole world, I wore jeans and I laughed. I hid the relationship because my father treats love like a hostile takeover. He audits everything: my calendar, my phone, my friendships. Elaine Whitman watched it happen for years, and she called it protection. One Saturday, Victor announced a charity gala, and he told me to attend. He said a man from a powerful family would be there, and I should be charming. I told him I had plans, and Victor's eyes narrowed. He asked with who? And I said with someone I care about. The table went still, and my mother stared at her plate. Victor told me to speak the name, and when I said Ryan Cole, he laughed. He said it sounded like a name on a dirty uniform. He said no daughter of his would date a mechanic. I told him Ryan was kind, and Victor called kindness a poor investment. He offered me a deal, end it now, and he would forget the mistake. I said no, and his face hardened into something familiar. He said if I disobeyed, I would lose everything I enjoy. He listed it like a contract: the penthouse access, the cars, the cards, the role at the company. Elaine whispered that I should stop, but she did not defend me. That night, Victor sent security to follow my car. I noticed the black vehicle behind me, and my skin went cold. Ryan noticed too, because he pays attention. He asked if I was safe, and I told him the truth. Ryan said, "You do not need a guard. You need freedom." I was terrified, but I kept showing up. We started talking about marriage, not as a plan, but as a promise. Ryan told me he would never ask me to choose him over myself. I told him I was choosing both, for the first time. When I finally said yes, it felt like stepping into sunlight. I knew Victor would punish me, but I could not go back. I walked into the penthouse and told my parents I was engaged. Victor did not shout, he smiled, and that smile was pure warning. Victor Whitman pretended to consider my engagement because performance is his favorite tool. He asked to meet Ryan Cole, and I believed it might be civil. I brought Ryan to a private dinner, and Victor treated him like a criminal. He asked where Ryan went to school, what his parents did, what property he owned. Ryan answered politely, then asked Victor one question in return. He asked if Victor loved his daughter. The air turned sharp, and Elaine Whitman gripped her napkin. Victor said love was irrelevant, and responsibility was everything. Ryan nodded and said responsibility without love is just control. Victor ended the dinner early, then called me into his office the next day. He offered a final bargain: leave Ryan, and he would fund a wedding to a man he chose. I said I would marry Ryan anyway. Victor said then, "You will pay for it yourself." The accounts froze within hours. My cards declined. My company badge stopped working. Friends who once called me daily stopped answering. The message was clear: I was being erased. Ryan did not panic. He found a small venue. He negotiated fair prices, and he held my hand through every choice. We planned a wedding that felt honest, not impressive. Still, Victor insisted he would attend, because he said optics matter. On the wedding day, I saw him walk in, suit perfect, smile ready. 300 guests stood, cameras rose, and music swelled. I thought he might stay quiet, for Elaine's sake, for my sake. Then Victor asked for the microphone. He praised legacy, wealth, and obedience, like those were virtues. He looked at Ryan and called him a mistake. He turned to the room and announced I was cut off. He said I was removed from his will, removed from every family trust, and removed from the company. He said I chose trash, so I would live like it. Elaine stared ahead, frozen, and I felt my chest split open. Ryan stepped closer, calm, and he whispered, "We leave with dignity." I took his hand, walked out of my own reception, and let Victor keep his stage. What he did not realize was that his cruelty had just set the real story in motion. The day after the wedding, my phone felt like a dead object. Every card was declined, every account access failed, and every familiar number went quiet. Victor Whitman did not just cut money, he cut air. He called my company Human Resources and had my email removed, and within an hour my badge stopped opening doors. A receptionist who used to greet me with a smile looked past me like I was a stranger. I drove home to the penthouse and found the doorman holding a sealed envelope. The letter said my key was deactivated, and I no longer had residence privileges. Elaine Whitman texted one line, "Please do not come here." It was a sentence that hurt more than Victor's speech. Ryan Cole took me to a small apartment in Queens, and I stared at the narrow hallway like it was another planet. There was no marble, no security desk, no staff, just a quiet place that smelled like soap and coffee. I sat on the edge of his couch and waited for panic, but what came first was exhaustion. Ryan cooked pasta, put a blanket over my shoulders, and said, "We will handle it one step at a time." The next morning, I opened my laptop and searched for jobs. I have a Master of Business Administration, experience in development, and contacts in the city. Still, the emails came back cold. "We have decided to move forward with other candidates." Some did not respond at all. A recruiter finally called and whispered that my father had made calls. Victor did not need to say my name. His reputation did the work. I started selling what I could: handbags, jewelry, a watch I never wanted. Each sale felt like tearing off a layer of the old world. Friends from my former life stopped inviting me to anything. A woman who once called me sister passed me on the street and looked away. I realized I had been surrounded by people who loved the Whitman access, not Claire. At night, I lay awake beside Ryan, listening to city sounds through thin walls. I wondered if I had ruined his life too. Ryan turned toward me and said, "You did not ruin anything. You escaped." His certainty was calming, but I still felt bruised. Victor wanted me to crawl back and beg. I promised myself I would not. 3 weeks into our new life, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. The voice belonged to Samuel Brooks, and he said he represented the estate of Margaret Hale, my grandmother. My stomach flipped, because my grandmother had been the only person in that family who treated me like a human being. Samuel asked if we could meet, and he spoke carefully, like he expected Victor interference. We met in a quiet office near Midtown, and Samuel placed a slim folder on the table. He said Margaret Hale created an independent trust years ago, separate from Victor Whitman control. He said it was designed to activate if I chose my own marriage, and if Victor tried to punish me for it. Samuel did not smile, but his eyes softened when he said Margaret saw this coming. Inside the folder was proof. A trust document, my name as beneficiary, and terms that felt like a hand on my shoulder. The trust did not make me rich in the way Victor is rich, but it gave me a runway, enough for living expenses, enough for a business start, enough to stop fear from steering every decision. Samuel said Margaret wanted me to build something of my own, and she wanted Victor to have no leverage. I walked out of the meeting and sat on a bench, shaking, not from weakness, from relief. Ryan met me outside and listened as I explained. He did not ask how much, he asked what I wanted to do. I told him I wanted to build a marketing firm, something modern, something that could stand without Whitman's shadow. Ryan said, "Then we do it." That night, I drafted a business plan on our small kitchen table. For the first time, my work felt like mine, not my father's tool. Starting a business is hard when your last name is a target. I registered the company, built a website, and started networking. Some doors opened, but many slammed fast. People would smile at first, then ask if I was Victor Whitman's daughter, and their tone would change. A few told me directly they could not risk it. Victor had built a kingdom, and he used it like a fence. I learned to pitch without my family story. I led with results, strategy, and clear plans. Slowly, small clients arrived. A boutique gym, a local restaurant, a startup with a tight budget. I worked long hours, wrote copy, designed campaigns, learned new tools, and tracked every metric. Ryan Cole supported me in quiet ways. He fixed our old car, brought home groceries, and reminded me to eat. He never asked me to apologize for choosing him. Still, Life stayed tight. Rent, utilities, and unexpected bills hit like waves. Some nights I cried in the shower so Ryan would not hear, because I did not want him carrying my fear too. One afternoon, a client suddenly canceled. They said their investor advised them to keep distance. I knew what that meant. I called Samuel Brooks and asked if Victor could touch the trust. Samuel said no, and his confidence steadied me. He also said I should expect Victor to test boundaries, because control does not stop on its own. A month later, I received an invitation to a charity gala, the kind Victor loves. It was addressed to me and Ryan, which felt like a trap, wrapped in fancy paper. Ryan looked at it and laughed once, low and calm. He said if Victor wants an audience, he can pay for it. I told Ryan I did not want drama. Ryan said we will go for one reason, to prove we do not fear him. I agreed, and I practiced breathing, because I knew the room would be full of people who once pretended to be my friends. The night of the gala, I put on a simple dress, not a statement dress, and Ryan wore a tailored suit that made me pause. He looked like a man with a secret, and he said only one line, "Trust me." The gala was held in a glass tower over the city, the kind of place that makes ordinary people whisper. I walked in with Ryan Cole beside me, and I felt the old world press against my skin. People turned, then turned away, like looking at me too long might cost them something. I saw Victor Whitman across the room, surrounded by executives and donors, smiling like a man who has never lost. Elaine Whitman stood near him, posture perfect, eyes careful, like she was watching a storm line. Victor noticed me and lifted his glass in a small mock salute. He did not walk over it first. He let others do the work. A woman I used to brunch with approached, hugged air near my cheek, and asked if I was all right. Her eyes flicked to Ryan, then back to me, and she whispered that Victor was furious. I told her I was fine, and she stepped away quickly, like my calm was contagious. Victor finally moved, slow and deliberate, and he stopped in front of Ryan. He looked Ryan up and down, and said, "You clean up well for a mechanic." Ryan smiled politely and said, "Thank you." Victor turned to me and asked if I was enjoying poverty, as if it was a theme party. I kept my voice even and said I was enjoying freedom. Victor laughed, then said he heard my little marketing business was struggling. He said it would be a shame if it failed, because failure would prove he was right. Ryan placed his hand lightly at my back, steadying without claiming. Victor's eyes narrowed at the gesture, and he leaned closer. He said I could still come home, if I apologized, if I ended the marriage, and if I accepted the man he chose. He said it softly, so only we would hear, because public cruelty is his tool, but private control is his addiction. I told him no, and I said it with a calm I did not feel. Victor's mouth tightened, and he whispered that Ryan would leave me when the money was gone. Ryan looked at Victor and said, "You are describing yourself." Victor's face twitched, then he turned away, because he did not like being spoken to as an equal. As he walked off, I saw heads tilt, people watching the interaction like a live show. My chest tightened, but Ryan squeezed my hand once and said, "Stay close. The night is not finished." 10 minutes later, a man approached Ryan Cole with a smile that looked practiced. He said, "Ryan, it is good to see you again," and he held out his hand with respect. Ryan shook it like it was normal. Another person joined, then another, then a small circle formed. They were not garage clients. They were finance people, the kind my father considers valuable. I watched Victor Whitman notice the circle, and I watched his face shift. At first it was annoyance, then confusion, then calculation. One of the men said they were excited about the new artificial intelligence platform, and they mentioned a data center partnership. My heart thumped, because Victor has been obsessed with data centers for months. Then the man said something that made the room tilt. He called Ryan the founder and chief executive officer. I blinked, certain I misheard. Ryan did not correct him. He nodded and said they would talk after the keynote. Victor stepped closer, pretending it was casual, but his body moved like hunger. He asked who they were, and one of the investors said they were with Ryan Company. Victor tried to laugh it off, said he did not realize a mechanic could run a company. The investor smiled politely and said Ryan built the company before he ever opened a garage. He said Ryan kept the garage because he liked the work and because it kept him grounded. I felt heat rise in my face, not embarrassment, shock. Ryan glanced at me and his eyes softened, like he had wanted to tell me, but he wanted me to meet the truth in my own time. Victor's tone changed instantly. He asked Ryan about potential collaboration, about infrastructure, about capital. His voice turned smooth, flattering, and eager. I recognized it. The voice he uses when he wants something. Ryan listened, then said one sentence, "I do not do business with people who humiliate their children." Victor froze. The investor circle went quiet, and I could feel eyes on us from every direction. Victor tried to recover, said it was a misunderstanding, said he was only teaching a lesson. Ryan said no. You were punishing her for love, and you did it in public. Victor looked at me, and for a second his mask slipped. There was fear, because fear is what control turns into when it fails. Then he straightened and walked away, because he could not stand being rejected on a stage he thought he owned. The next day, the fallout moved through New York faster than gossip usually does. Victor Whitman had been chasing a massive data center deal, and that gala was meant to lock it in. Instead, he lost the only person who could sign off. I learned the details through a former colleague who still dared to text me. She said Victor was furious, shouting in a boardroom, blaming everyone, demanding new contacts. He could not replace Ryan Cole, because Ryan held the decision. Victor tried to call me, then text me, then email me through assistants, like he could buy a bridge back with urgency. I did not answer. My marketing firm inbox suddenly filled with inquiries, real ones, not pity. People wanted to work with me because they saw me standing beside a man they respected, and because drama makes headlines. I hated that part, but I used it. I took calls, wrote proposals, and turned attention into contracts. Ryan stayed calm through it all, like success was not new to him. That night, in our small apartment, I asked him why he never told me. Ryan said he wanted to be loved without his net worth attached. He said he has watched people change their faces when they smell money, and he did not want that in our marriage. I understood, because I grew up inside that exact disease. Ryan told me he built his company in his 20s, and the garage came later, for peace. He said he did not need to prove anything, and he did not want me trapped in another kind of cage. I told him I loved him for who he is, and I meant it. 2 days later, Victor showed up outside our building, with a driver in a suit that looked like armor. He asked the doorman to calm me down, like I still followed his schedule. I came anyway, because I wanted to see what desperation looks like on his face. Victor said he wanted to talk, and he said it like a request, not an order. It sounded unnatural. He said he had been harsh, and he offered to restore everything, my job, my trust access, my place in the will. He said we could all move forward, as if the wedding speech never happened. I looked at him and said, "You do not get to erase a public humiliation with a private deal." Victor's eyes flicked to Ryan, then back to me, and I realized his apology was not for me. It was for the deal he lost. Victor Whitman stood in front of me with his hands open, like he was offering peace. But his eyes kept sliding past my face, toward Ryan Cole, like my husband was the real audience. Victor said he wanted to repair our relationship, and he said he regretted how things went at the wedding. He blamed emotion, he blamed stress, he blamed bad timing. He did not say, "I am sorry for humiliating you." He said, "We can move forward." That is not apology, that is negotiation. I asked him one question. Would you be here if Ryan was still only a mechanic? Victor paused for a fraction of a second, then smiled, and that smile answered me. Elaine Whitman was not with him, but I could imagine her sitting somewhere, telling herself this was family unity. Victor offered to restore my company role, to reactivate my accounts, and to include me again in his will. He said it like a gift, but it was really a leash. Ryan stepped closer, and said, "We do not need your money." Victor stiffened and said, "It is not about money." Then he immediately started talking about data centers again. He asked Ryan for a meeting, a private meeting, just men talking business. Ryan said no again, and Victor's face hardened. He looked at me and said, "You are choosing pride over security." I said I chose love over control, and I chose my dignity over his approval. Victor's voice sharpened, and he warned me I would regret burning bridges. I told him the bridge burned at my wedding, and he held the match. Victor left without shaking my hand, because he never learned how to exit without punishing someone. When he drove away, my knees felt weak, not from fear of him, from the finality. I had waited my whole life for him to love me like a daughter. He only loved me like an asset. Ryan put his arm around me and asked if I was okay. I said yes, but my voice broke. Ryan kissed my forehead and said, "Your father cannot buy his way into our lives." That night I cried quietly. Then I slept deeper than I had in months. A week later, Elaine Whitman asked to meet me alone. She chose a quiet cafe downtown, far from Victor's favorite rooms. She looked older than I remembered, like stress finally showed on her face when nobody was watching. Elaine held her cup with both hands and said she never wanted this. She said Victor has always been intense, and she learned to survive by smoothing things over. She said she thought if she kept peace, he would eventually soften. I listened, because I needed to hear what she would own. Elaine admitted she did not stop him at the wedding, and she said she hates herself for that moment. Then she said something that surprised me. She said Margaret Hale warned her. My grandmother told Elaine that Victor would use money as a weapon, and that I would need a way out. Elaine said she did not understand until it happened. She asked if I was safe, and I said yes, I am safe. Then Elaine asked about Ryan, and her eyes looked nervous. I told her the truth. Ryan is kind, and he is steady, and he loves me. Elaine nodded slowly and said, "Victor is frightened by what he cannot control." She asked if she could see me again. I told her maybe, but not if she brings Victor with her. Elaine reached into her purse and slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a note in Margaret Hale handwriting, written years ago, addressed to me. It said, "Claire, choose love. And when the storm comes, remember you were never wrong for wanting peace." My throat tightened. Elaine apologized again, this time simpler, and she did not add excuses. It was the closest thing to truth I had heard from her in years. Before we left, Elaine said Victor is not done trying. She said he will keep circling, because he cannot accept losing. I nodded, because I already knew. The only difference now was that I did not feel trapped. Victor Whitman tried to weaponize my past network, but it was failing. He called clients and hinted that working with my firm was risky. Some listened, but more ignored him, because fear changes direction when power shifts. Ryan Coal Company announced a major expansion, and suddenly people cared more about Ryan than about Victor. My work stabilized. I hired one assistant, then another. I rebuilt a career without Whitman logos. The strangest part was learning how to live without constant supervision. I could choose dinner without approval. I could buy groceries without checking limits. I could laugh without scanning faces. Still, Victor kept pushing. He sent flowers to our apartment, extravagant ones, with a card that said "Family First." I sent them back, unopened. He sent an invitation to a board event with my name printed on it. I threw it away. Then he tried a new route. He contacted Samuel Brooks. Samuel called me and said Victor asked about Margaret Hale Trust. Samuel sounded irritated, and he said, "Victor has no access." Samuel reminded me that Margaret built the trust to be separate for a reason. He also said Victor was angry about it, because it proved Margaret did not trust him. I laughed once, bitter, because it was true. That evening, Ryan and I walked through our neighborhood, hand in hand, and I told him I still felt like a child sometimes, waiting for punishment. Ryan said, "You are not waiting anymore. You are building." He told me my father only understands transactions, so he will always try to turn love into a deal. Ryan said the answer is simple. We refuse the deal. I nodded, and for the first time I believed it fully. Later, my phone buzzed with a message from Victor. It was short, cold, and familiar. He said I would come back, because I always do. I stared at the screen. Then I typed one sentence and sent it. I said no, I will not. Then I blocked his number. The silence afterward felt unreal, but it also felt like freedom. Victor Whitman did not handle being blocked well. He could not call, so he sent messages through assistants, then through lawyers, then through people I barely knew. When none of that worked, he tried to punish me the only way he understood. He tried to punish my work. A large client suddenly paused our contract, saying they received concerns about my stability. I heard Victor's name between the lines, but I refused to beg. Instead, I documented everything, built new proposals, and diversified so one contract could not break me. Ryan Cole watched me do it, and he said I was becoming what Victor feared, independent. Meanwhile, Victor's problems grew. His data center dream did not just stall, it started collapsing. Investors asked why his projected partnerships were missing. Competitors moved in fast, buying land, securing power agreements, building momentum, while Victor argued with ghosts. A former Whitman executive told Elaine Whitman that Victor's board was nervous. Victor responded with control. He demanded loyalty. He cut budgets. He blamed people, and every move made him look weaker. The press picked up the story, not as Claire Whitman's scandal, but as Victor Whitman losing his edge. He was used to headlines that praised him. These headlines questioned him. One night Elaine called me, voice low, and she said Victor was unraveling. She said he refused to admit he miscalculated Ryan. She said he thought Ryan would fold, and instead Ryan became the gate he could not open. I felt no joy, only a tired kind of clarity. Victor did not lose because I married Ryan. Victor lost because he tried to control outcomes with cruelty, and cruelty is not strategy. A few days later, I saw Victor at another industry event, across the room, posture stiff, smile forced. He spotted me and started walking over. Ryan squeezed my hand once and said we do not owe him a conversation. Victor reached us anyway, eyes sharp, and he spoke like he was still in charge. He said he would forgive me if I apologized publicly, and if I acknowledged his authority. Ryan looked at him and said, "You are negotiating with the wrong people." Victor's face twitched. Then he leaned toward me and whispered that he could still destroy me. I looked him in the eye and said, "You already tried, and you failed." For the first time, Victor looked unsure of what to do next. A month later, Samuel Brooks called me again. He said, "Margaret Hale, trust required one annual check-in, and he wanted to confirm my address and my business details." Then he paused and said he had something else. He said he received a request from Elaine Whitman. Elaine asked Samuel to deliver a letter to me, privately, without Victor's knowledge. Samuel asked if I wanted it, and I said yes. The envelope arrived 2 days later, simple and unbranded. Elaine's handwriting was careful, like she rewrote every line. She said she was sorry, without explaining it away. She said she failed me at my wedding, and she failed me for years by staying quiet. She said she does not expect forgiveness, but she wanted me to know she sees Victor clearly now. She said, "Victor is not love. Victor is control, and she is tired of calling it family." Elaine said she wants a relationship with me that does not involve money, and she asked if she could meet Ryan as a person, not as a headline. I read the letter twice. Then I set it down and stared at the wall. It was the first time Elaine's words sounded like her own, not Victor's echo. Ryan read it too. Then he asked what I wanted. I told him I wanted to believe her, but trust takes time. I replied with one message, a short one. "I will meet you, alone, and we will start slowly." Elaine responded within minutes, thanking me. That night, I slept with a strange feeling. Not hope exactly, but possibility. Victor still existed, but Elaine might be stepping out of his shadow. Margaret Hale had always said people can change when they finally see the cost. I did not know if Elaine would hold, but I was willing to see. Elaine Whitman met me in the same quiet cafe as before. She looked less polished, more human, like she stopped dressing for Victor approval. She asked about my business first, and she listened, really listened, when I described clients and late nights and small wins. She asked about Ryan Cole, and I told her he is steady, and he is kind, and he never makes me feel like a product. Elaine swallowed and said she should have wanted that for me. I asked her why she stayed so silent for so long. Elaine's hands trembled slightly around her cup, and she admitted she was afraid. She said Victor trained her to believe that resistance is chaos. She said she thought she was protecting me by keeping Victor calm, but she was only feeding him. Elaine said Victor is furious about the blocked number, and he keeps asking for updates, like I am still on a leash. Elaine said she stopped giving him information. That one sentence mattered more than any apology. I told Elaine the boundary clearly. No Victor contact through her, no requests for meetings, no pressure to reconcile. Elaine nodded and said she understands. She then said Victor Company was under review because of several aggressive decisions tied to the failed data center plan. She said Victor might face a board vote. I did not celebrate. I asked Elaine if she was safe. Elaine smiled sadly and said safety is new for her too. When we stood to leave, Elaine reached for my hand, then hesitated, and I let her take it. It was small, but it felt real. Outside, the city moved as usual. Taxis, horns, winter air. Elaine hugged me lightly, then stepped back and said, I am proud of you. I believed her, because her eyes did not flick toward any cameras. As I walked away, I realized my life was no longer a Whitman project. It was mine, and it was steady, and it was free. Elaine Whitman warning was not a rumor. 2 weeks later, a friend from my old office called from a private number. He said the Whitman board scheduled an emergency meeting, and Victor Whitman was not taking it well. He had burned trust by betting too hard on deals he could not secure, and by treating partners like pawns. When the data center plan failed, it did not just fail quietly, it exposed his arrogance. The board wanted answers, and Victor only offered blame. Elaine texted me that night, and she wrote one line, he thinks you caused this. It was classic Victor, shifting responsibility toward the closest target. In the morning, headlines hinted at internal conflict, not my name, but the company name. I could almost hear Victor breaking glass somewhere. Ryan Cole told me to stay away from the noise, but Victor does not respect distance. He sent a courier to my office with a sealed letter. Inside was a demand. He wanted me to meet him, privately, and he wanted Ryan there. It was framed as a family conversation, but the tone was corporate, sharp, and controlling. I handed the letter to Samuel Brooks and asked if it touched Margaret Hale trust in any way. Samuel said no, and he reminded me that Victor has no authority over that trust. I exhaled, because Victor hates what he cannot control, and he always tries to claw into it. I told Ryan about the letter, and Ryan said we will not meet him alone. He suggested a neutral location, with witnesses, and only if it served our boundaries. I agreed, because I refused to step into a room where Victor could rewrite reality. That afternoon, Elaine called me, voice quiet, and she said the board vote might happen soon. She said Victor was begging for support from old allies, and many were ignoring him. Elaine then said something I never expected to hear. She said she was considering leaving. She said she was tired of being used as a shield. My throat tightened. I told her she deserved peace too. Elaine whispered, "Thank you," then ended the call quickly, like emotions were still dangerous in her world. Victor Whitman agreed to meet at a law office conference room because he respects rooms that smell like power. He arrived early, suit perfect, face tight, and his lawyer sat beside him like a bodyguard. Ryan Cole and I arrived with our own counsel, a practical attorney Ryan trusts, and I felt steadier with that support. Victor started with a speech about family, then quickly pivoted to business because he cannot stay human for long. He said he wanted to collaborate with Ryan, and he wanted to bring me back into the company, as if those were favors. Ryan listened without expression. I watched Victor's eyes flick between us, measuring where leverage might exist. Victor then said the quiet part out loud. He said if we helped him stabilize the board, he would restore my inheritance. He said it like a trade, vote support in exchange for money. I kept my voice calm and asked if he was sorry. Victor blinked, then said he regretted how things looked. That is what he offered. Regret for optics, not remorse for harm. Ryan leaned forward and said he would not partner with a man who uses his daughter as collateral. Victor's jaw tightened, and he snapped that Ryan was manipulating me. I told Victor I chose my own life, and he hates that. Victor then turned to my lawyer and said he would contest Margaret Hale Trust, claiming influence and incapacity. Samuel Brooks had already warned me about this threat. My lawyer said Victor had no standing, and Samuel's documentation was clean. Victor slammed his hand on the table, and Elaine Whitman's voice suddenly came through the speakerphone. She had joined the call quietly, and she said Victor would not do that because it would expose his own records. The room went still. Victor stared at the phone like it betrayed him. Elaine said she was done covering for him, and she would not support any attack on Margaret's plan. Victor tried to speak, and Elaine ended the call. Ryan looked at Victor and said, "You just lost your last shield." Victor's face went rigid, and I saw fear again. The fear of losing control in front of witnesses. 2 days later, the board vote happened. I did not attend, but I received the result from Elaine Whitman, a short message. He is out, effective immediately. Victor Whitman had been removed as chief executive officer. The words felt unreal, because Victor always acted like gravity was optional for him. News outlets reported a leadership transition, careful language, but the message was clear: the king fell. Victor tried to spin it as temporary, but investors do not tolerate tantrums. My phone lit up with unknown numbers, old acquaintances suddenly friendly, asking how I was. I ignored them. The only call I answered was Elaine. She sounded exhausted, but lighter. She said she moved into a separate apartment, and she filed for separation. She said she did not know who she was without Victor, but she wanted to find out. I told her I was proud of her, and I meant it. That evening, Ryan and I ate dinner in our small kitchen, and the city hummed outside. I expected to feel victorious, but what I felt was quiet. Victor's downfall did not heal my wedding wound. It did not erase his public speech or the months of isolation. It only proved what I already knew. Control eventually collapses under its own weight. Samuel Brooks emailed me an update about Margaret Hale Trust, confirming it was secure and that no challenges had been filed successfully. He said Margaret built it to withstand Victor's ego. I smiled at that because it sounded like her. Then, a message arrived from Victor, sent through an assistant, asking to meet again, alone. I looked at it, then deleted it. Victor had a lifetime to treat me like a daughter. He chose to treat me like a deal. Now, the deal was over. Victor Whitman did not fade quietly. He still had money, still had contacts, and still had pride that refused reality. But he no longer had the one thing he used, like oxygen: authority. Without the company title, his threats sounded smaller. He tried to lean on old allies, but many had already chosen survival over loyalty. He sent another message to Elaine Whitman, demanding she come home. Elaine did not respond. He sent one to me through a different assistant, offering to meet for dinner. The words were softer, but the intention was the same: regain access, regain control. Ryan Cole told me we should expect a final push, because men like Victor treat boundaries as challenges. The push came on a rainy Friday. Victor appeared outside my office building, standing under an umbrella like a man waiting for a deal to close. He approached as I stepped out, and he said, "Claire, we need to talk." His voice was not angry. It was urgent. He said he lost everything: and he claimed he only wanted his daughter back. I looked at him and asked what he lost, his title or his love. Victor flinched at the question. He said he made mistakes, and he said he was trying to fix them. Then he said the line that proved nothing changed. He said I should now understand how the world works. He said I should come home, and we should rebuild the Whitman image together. I told him I am not an image. Victor's eyes narrowed, and he said Ryan turned me against him. Ryan stepped between us, calm, and said no. Victor turned Claire against you. Victor laughed bitterly and said Ryan thinks he's better because of money. Ryan said money does not make a man better, but cruelty makes a man worse. Victor tried to pivot. He asked for Ryan help with one last investor meeting. Ryan said no. Victor's voice rose, and he accused me of being ungrateful for the life he gave me. I told him the life he gave me came with chains, and I do not wear chains anymore. Victor stared at me like I was a stranger. In a way, I was. I walked away, heart pounding, not from fear, from relief. Elaine Whitman moved slowly at first, like she was learning how to stand. She invited me to her apartment, a smaller place with plain furniture and quiet corners. There were no staff, no marble, no Victor. She looked nervous when I arrived, like she expected punishment for breathing. She offered tea, and her hands shook slightly. Elaine told me she filed paperwork, separation documents, financial disclosures, and she felt exposed. She said Victor called her a traitor, and he tried to threaten her with humiliation. Elaine said she finally realized she had been living in a hostage situation, just one with nicer curtains. She asked if I could forgive her. I did not give her a clean yes, because my pain is real, but I told her I could try. Elaine cried softly. Not the performative kind, the exhausted kind. She said Margaret Hale was the only person who ever told her the truth. Margaret told her that controlling men do not soften with time, they sharpen. Elaine said she ignored it, because she was afraid of being alone. I told her loneliness is safer than a life where you cannot speak. Elaine nodded, and she said she wants to meet Ryan again, to thank him, because she sees now that he saved me from the life Victor planned. I told her Ryan did not save me. He stood beside me while I saved myself. Elaine smiled sadly, and she said, "That is even better." Before I left, Elaine handed me a small box, an old photo of me and Margaret, and a note Margaret wrote years ago. It said, "You are allowed to choose your own joy." I held it like it was a key. Elaine hugged me carefully, and I let her. Outside, the city noise felt softer. Elaine was not fully healed, and neither was I, but we were finally walking in the same direction. The months that followed were not dramatic. They were steady, and steady is what I wanted. My marketing firm grew slowly, client by client, proof by proof. I learned to celebrate small wins, a good campaign, a satisfied review, a paycheck that came from my own work. Ryan Cole kept his life simple, even with his company expanding. He still visited the garage sometimes, not because he needed money, but because he liked being around honest labor. We started building routines that did not involve fear: Sunday walks, grocery trips, quiet dinners. Samuel Brooks checked in once a quarter, confirming Margaret Hale Trust was stable and protected. I stopped thinking about Victor Whitman every day. That was the real victory. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived at my office. It was from Victor, handwritten, no assistant name. I did not open it immediately. I let it sit on my desk until my pulse settled. When I finally opened it, the letter was longer than anything he ever wrote me. He said he was sorry for how he spoke at the wedding. He said he lost sight of what matters. He said he misses me. But even there, he could not resist control. He suggested terms for reconciliation, private dinners, public statements, and a return to the company image. I read the letter once, then I folded it and put it away. If an apology arrives with conditions, it is not apology. That night I told Ryan, and he asked what I wanted. I said, I want peace more than closure. Ryan nodded, and he said peace is a choice we make daily. I went to bed and slept without dreaming of the penthouse. In the morning, I woke up, made coffee, and went back to the life I chose, the life that does not require Victor permission. Victor Whitman did not stop sending messages, but the tone changed. He stopped sounding like a king and started sounding like a man who realized he has no room left. One evening, Samuel Brooks called me and said Victor contacted him again, asking about Margaret Hale Trust. Samuel sounded firm, and he said the answer is still no. He reminded Victor in writing that the trust is independent, and Victor has no authority. After that, Victor tried a different angle. He sent a small gift to my office, not expensive, just a book about architecture, with a note that said he remembered I love design. The note almost worked on my heart, because it was the first time he referenced me as a person. Then I remembered the wedding microphone and the cold smile. I did not send the book back, but I did not open a door either. I placed it on a shelf and moved on. Elaine Whitman asked me what I wanted from Victor, and I told her I wanted accountability without conditions. Elaine said Victor does not know how to do that yet. The truth is, some people only learn softness after the world takes their weapons away. A week later, Victor showed up again, not at my office, at the small park where Ryan Cole and I walk after dinner. He did not bring a driver this time. He walked up slowly, hands visible, face tired. He said, "Claire, I know you do not owe me anything." The sentence sounded strange coming from him, like a foreign language. He asked for 5 minutes, and I agreed, because I wanted to see what he would say without power. Victor admitted he misjudged Ryan. He admitted he tried to control me through money, and he said he thought it would keep me safe. I told him money never made me feel safe. It made me feel owned. Victor swallowed hard. He asked if he could meet Ryan properly, and Ryan looked at me for my cue. I said, no. Victor flinched, then asked if he could meet me for coffee, just once. I said maybe, but only if he stopped trying to negotiate my life. Victor nodded, but I could tell his instinct was still to bargain. Before he left, he said he misses me. I did not answer, because missing someone is not the same as loving them well. Victor walked away into the dark, and I stood there feeling something like grief. Not for what we had, for what we never did. The last part of this story is not a courtroom scene, and it is not a dramatic speech. It is a quiet truth that took me years to learn. A father who only respects you when you bring him profit does not respect you. Victor Whitman did not change because I proved my worth. He changed because he finally saw he could not control the outcome. Ryan Cole did not save me with money. He saved me with steadiness, and with the refusal to treat love like a transaction. Margaret Hale protected me the only way she could, through paper that Victor could not burn. Elaine Whitman stepped out of fear slowly. And that mattered too. Today my life is smaller on the outside, and richer on the inside. I work for clients who value results, not last names. I go home to a man who listens, not a man who manages. I have mornings that feel peaceful, and evenings that feel safe. Sometimes I still remember the wedding, the microphone, the laughter, and the way Victor smiled while he cut me off. It still stings, because betrayal from family is a special kind of wound. But I also remember walking out holding Ryan's hand, and realizing that dignity can be chosen. If you ever feel trapped by a family that uses money as a weapon, hear me clearly. Love does not demand obedience. Respect does not come with conditions. If someone only treats you kindly when they think you are valuable, then their kindness is not love. It is pricing. Victor lost the deal he wanted because he tried to buy what cannot be bought. I gained a life because I stopped selling myself for approval. That is the real ending. Not revenge, not riches, just freedom that finally feels like mine.